I'll start out and saying, hey, Doug, and, tell folks what you do and what your organization does.
It's great to be here with you virtually, Shemia. I'm Doug Moore. I'm the Executive Director for the Oregon League of Conservation Voters. What we do as an organization is we work to elect champions for the environment to office. We work to stop rollbacks of environmental policy or bad policy from passing, and we work to pass and enact good laws for the environment across the state of Oregon.
And what communities in particular does OLCV work with around Oregon?
We work all over the state. We're a statewide organization, so we have groups of very strong groups of volunteers from in Portland, in Clackamas County, Washington County, in Central Oregon, in Bend, on the coast as well, down through Corvallis and Eugene, down in Ashland as well. So we have a pretty good mix of people throughout the state. Most of our staff is concentrated here in Portland, since that's where it's closer to Salem. But we do statewide work focused on local policy, from trying to get the City Council of Bend to do a climate resolution or transportation planning, to Portland city races. We'll do work on statewide issues or state legislative issues. So we're kind of all over the place on with that regard.
And specifically relating to the Secretary of State's office, I know that when I was in your endorsement interview, the State Land Board came up, which is a role that the Secretary of State plays here in Oregon. And in other states, they have a separate person.
Right.
But the Secretary of State in Oregon, we get like 5 for the price of 1, like elections, audits, land board, public records, corporate division. But, in other states, it's spread out. But obviously, that's an issue of great importance to OLCV. Do you want to kind of just break that down for folks a little bit who might not be familiar with the Secretary of State's role on the land board?
Yeah, I would be happy to. So the land board is comprised of the governor, the Secretary of State, and the treasurer. You have 3 people who are effectively managing Oregon state public lands. And they oftentimes have the final say over a sale or what happens with a forest like the Elliott State Forest. A couple of years ago, there was an effort to sell our state forest to a private timber company. And the land board stepped in and said, no, we're not going to let that happen. We're going to keep this forest in public hands. So you can kind of see how big of a deal that would be, selling off one of our state forests, an asset that is really important to generations of Oregonians going forward. We want to make sure that lands like that are staying in public hands, and we want to make sure that the policies that the land board enacts for the management of those lands are also have strong environmental values attached to it. So we keep very close eye on the land board. It's a very important component of the Secretary of State's responsibilities from our perspective, and our community cares, just really focuses on how that land is managed. And so it's a really important role, particularly when you think there's 3 people that are in charge of this, and this race is one of those. So we care a lot about that.
No, and that makes sense. And I appreciated not only having to talk about that, but learning. That's one of my favorite things about endorsement interviews is you go into an organization and they're focused on kind of one angle of the Secretary of State's office. And so I think a lot of folks that have never run for office don't know how these things work. It's not just you and me, Doug and Shemia, talking to being like, hey, will you endorse me? That's not how it works. It's me going before your board and a very intense questionnaire and a very intense Q&A session where I not only answered questions, but got to ask questions and learn from the folks in your organization. One issue that I've proposed in the Secretary of State's race that is not directly environmental related, but is directly environmental related at the same time is, we talked about how the walkouts, the Republicans that decided to close down the Capitol and basically do backdoor voter suppression, right? We have free and fair elections in Oregon. We have one of the highest voter turnouts. We have no concerns about election security or ballot tampering. We had every vote was counted accurately. And yet they didn't like the results of the election. They didn't like that Oregonians chose 18 Democrats in the Senate and 38 Democrats in the House. So they just said, we refuse to accept the outcome of this election, despite having no concerns about its validity, and we walk out. And it was OLCV that was most directly, at least in terms of your policy, OLCV and the Renew Oregon Coalition, that was really directly impacted by that. Do you want to kind of give that from your perspective, how frustrating that was to have this clean energy jobs bill, and then obviously, the subsequent bill from the February 2020 session? Just not fail for lack of support, fail for lack of the ability for government to function at all.
Well, you're right about it being backdoor suppression. I mean, that's really what it is. The general election, if you do the sequence at the end of the 2018 general election, the governor, one of the key points in her reelection was she was pro-environment, that she was going to be strong on climate change, that we ran this race on climate change in a host of different places. We helped get climate champions elected across the state. It was an electoral issue. Voters said very decisively, hey, we want the state to take action on climate change. And then the legislature moves forward. There's a bill out there. It's been vetted through public hearings for months and months and months, thousands of hours done, listening to constituents throughout the state. And then to have people walk off the job and say, no, we're not going to let you vote on this. Not even going to let you vote on it. I mean, that's really, it's a travesty that was allowed to happen, that people took that route. So yeah, it was incredibly frustrating. And then to see it happen again in February, and to see just, we're not going to let anybody govern Oregon if it's not us. I mean, that's anti-democratic. Just no doubt about it. In this era right now, in the world that we live in the United States, I believe that this is Oregon's challenge of democracy. How are we going to protect and preserve our democracy in the face of people who simply refuse to let the will of the people be heard and implemented?
Yep.
If we can't solve this, then I'm not sure what we're going to be able to do and how we're going to call ourselves a democracy.
Right, I agree. And that's why I've made it an issue in the Secretary of State's race, because the reality is I see the primary role of the Secretary of State beyond the specifics as a person to champion and protect the integrity of our democracy, our small d democracy, right? Which means that we all agree on a fair set of rules. You win some, you lose some. You and I both know, Doug, we don't always have the candidates that we want to get elected win. We don't always have the issues at the ballot that we want to win. We have things that we don't support win. We have candidates who we don't support win. But we all agree on a fair set of rules. And so even when we don't get the candidate we want or the issue we want, we live to fight another day because we have a fair set of rules and we accept the outcome even when we don't like it, because we know that that makes it more likely in the future that others will accept the outcome when we like it and they don't. And that's the kind of the basic bargain of democracy. And so I've made, really having a policy package as a Secretary of State, kind of a restore the integrity of our democracy policy package to put forward as Secretary of State, to really say, I mean, we can't change the requirement of how many senators and House members have to show up without Oregon voters voting on that in the Constitution. But we can certainly say you don't get paid if you don't show up for work. Now, you don't continue to get your nice health insurance benefits if you don't show up for work. And if you don't show up for work so many times, 10 times, 10 unexcused absences, you're not eligible for rehire. You don't get your job back. You can't seek reelection. And so hopefully we will be successful in building some support around that. Well, I really appreciate the work that you guys have done. I've obviously been thrilled for the past, since 2012 when I first got elected to the House to partner with OLCV, really thrilled to have your endorsement in this race. And obviously we're featuring you in our ads, as we know that Oregonians, at their core, Oregonians support climate action and conservation values. And so I just want to really let you know that I appreciate the support of the OLCV in this race.
Well, Shemia, we really appreciate the work that you've done on behalf of the environment. I know that not everyone perhaps has seen you as an environmental champion in your work in the state Senate and in the state House. And, I would disagree with that. I mean, I want to take the opportunity to highlight some of the strengths of your record. You have a lifetime score of 91%. In 2019, your score was 94%. That's fantastic. And we thank you very much for your support for our issues. But I really want to emphasize something that highlights the qualitative nature of your commitment to the environment. When the walkouts happened, it really meant a lot to our community that you were the person who came out and talked to us and said, what do you need me to do? How can I help? I don't sit on any of the committees. There's not a lot I can do from that perspective, but I'm here for you, and I want you to know that I've got your back, and we're going to work day and night to get this bill done. So you layer that on top of your strong scores and your strong history. Standing up for climate action is really important, and you did that, in my perspective, in a very tangible, visible, effective, important way. And we thank you for it. And I think that was one of the key things that helped us really look at you as a champion for the environment for Secretary of State, the champion that we need to see in office.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate that, Doug, very much. And I'm looking forward to working with you guys as Secretary of State and as a member of the State Lands Board. And stay safe. And you're clearly staying home. You got quite the bookshelf behind you. I'm assuming we share an interest in kind of dystopian type novels. And so I'm assuming that some of those back there are ones I would want to read if this thing lasts for much longer.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is the start of a lot of dystopian novels. And I'm pretty pleased actually that things haven't gone quite as they would in a dystopian novel.
Yes, although in the movie, I forget if it's Contagion or Outbreak, they have a vaccine by the end of the movie, and I'm like, damn, I wish we could move that quickly.
Yeah, I think that was Contagion.
Everyone just languishes for 18 months to 2 years with masks on, right? So that's frustrating. But very cool. Well, thanks, Doug. Great to see you, and take care, and I'll look forward to talking to you again soon.
All right. Thank you. Take care. Stay safe. Stay sane. Stay inside.
All right. See ya.
Okay. Bye.